Folks, welcome to Mobility Matters. I am your host, Javier Betancourt, Executive Director of the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, or CITT. We're the agency charged with overseeing the half-penny sales tax for transportation that the voters approved 20 years ago. So today is May 18th, and I only say the date because it is my birthday, and I could think of no better way to spend my birthday than with you today and with my special guest, Joe Ruiz. So Joe is currently the chair of the Transportation Planning Organization's Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee. That is a lot to say, so we'll use the short version, the TPO's CTAC, right? And so we can start using that moving forward. Joe, welcome to the show.
Javier, thank you for having me, and happy birthday.
Well, thank you. And listen, so in addition to being chair of CTAC, which we'll get into, you're also a partner at Wernick & Co., correct?
That's correct.
And what is Wernick & Co.?
We are a boutique law firm in Coral Gables that focuses on land use and zoning.
Okay, and where are you located?
Actually, right on Miracle Mile.
Nice spot.
A block away from City Hall, so you can't beat the spot. A nice walkable location to many different places.
So I go back to an old hat I used to wear as Director of Economic Development for the city of Coral Gables.
That's
when
right.
We were doing the streetscape, and it was in large part to attract businesses like yours. So
Yeah,
thank you for being
it's
there.
worked.
Good.
It seems like there's a new restaurant opening every other day.
Yeah.
So, great.
All right, so let's go back to CTAC for a second. So for those who don't know what the TPO does, let's start there. What is the TPO?
The TPO at a high level guides the county's transportation planning process.
Okay. And we had the executive director of the TPO, Eileen Bouclé, on the show.
Fantastic.
What was it? I guess maybe 4 weeks ago. So if you're interested in learning more about the TPO, you could go back and check out that wonderful conversation with Eileen.
She's great.
And so the TPO has a governing board composed of largely elected officials.
Correct.
And those elected officials then get to appoint citizens, members of the public by and large, to a series of advisory committees, right?
Correct.
That help to advise them. And they have a series of committees. CTAC, which you're chair of, BPAC, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. You have TARC, what I think is Transportation Aesthetic Review Committee. This is actually a test to see how much of this I
I'm
remember.
impressed so far.
And a series of others. So many ways for citizens, everyday citizens, to get involved in the transportation planning process through these committees. But the core committee, and dare I say the most important, is CTAC, Citizens Transportation Advisory Committee. So tell us more about what that committee specifically does compared to maybe some of the others.
I think it's an extremely important committee. It's a committee that makes sure that what's being proposed by the TPO meets the needs of the citizens. And one of the main reasons why I'm here is to get more people involved in that process. Unfortunately, right now we have more vacancies than members. So what I want to do is I want to increase awareness about this committee. So if people who are interested want to join, they can reach out to Paul Chance, who is our liaison at the TPO. His number is 305-375-1888. And if you have any interest, please reach out to him. We would love to increase the membership and have people on the board.
How many members are on the committee? How many vacancies generally do you think you have? And what are the requirements to serve?
There are approximately, I want to say 15 vacancies right now.
Wow.
Okay, right.
So
each member of the TPO has the ability to nominate a person from the public, and that person's name would be brought to the TPO and then ratified by that board. And I was fortunate enough, Commissioner Eileen Higgins, who is just fantastic, nominated me, to be part of the committee.
Now, I know at the CITT you have to be a resident of the district for that commissioner to appoint you as a member. That is not the case at CTAC, right? It's much more flexible.
Exactly, that's not the case.
So the requirements are basically an interest to serve and the members' approval.
Willing to appoint, yeah, and then ultimate approval by the TPO.
Don't have to be a transportation professional or expert, just someone with an interest.
No, then that's the great thing about the committee. I mean, you don't need to be an expert. I by no means am a transportation expert. I may have a land use and planning background and public government background, but not necessarily transportation. But that's where you get these unique perspectives that you otherwise wouldn't get.
So tell me about some of the things you'll see as a member of CTAC if you were to join. You know, what's kind of like a day in the life of CTAC?
Well, one of the interesting things that's going on right now is the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP. Think of this as the 5-year capital plan. So this would be the capital plan from 2024 to 2028 that is in a 45-day public comment period. So that comment period ends May 25th, and it's extremely important that the public go online, the TPO website. You'll be able to find links there. They actually have a citizens version that kind of condenses down a more technical document into something that's more readable and user-friendly. And again, that's going to walk through the 5-year plan for all these capital transportation projects that have almost $12 billion in funding set aside for these projects. So that's something that's going to be coming back to CTAC at the end of this month for a resolution to the TPO ultimately to approve or not. But you know, we'll get items like that. FDOT will come give presentations and updates on projects that they're working on. So really, we'll run the gamut. But you know, the most important thing right now is TIP, because these are going to be the most immediate projects. These are going to be the shovels in the ground. These are going to see the projects that are fully funded, and you're going to see within the next 5 years.
Yeah, and let me just reaffirm that it is an extremely important document and process, probably the most important of the transportation plans, right? You have the LRTP, which is the long range. It's looking out 30 years.
Planning exercise.
You have,
right.
we have a 5-year plan. Everybody's got a plan, right?
Right.
Every good government agency has a plan. But this particular one is where the priorities are determined and where funding is assigned. So
Exactly.
it is probably the most important document.
Right, and we're in that critical 45-day window where the public has the opportunity to comment on that plan.
That's great.
So again, May 25th is your last day to comment.
Speaking of members of the public, they are allowed to attend and provide input at your meetings?
Yes, always.
So CTAC meetings are fully sunshined. You have a public comment period, right?
Yes.
Excellent. And where do you meet?
We actually meet downtown at the TPO headquarters.
Okay.
I forget the exact address off the top of my head, but it's downtown.
Used to be Museum Tower. I don't know what they call the building now. But yeah, adjacent to the library. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. And that is accessible to the public, you know.
Park in the cultural garage, caddy corner, and
or even
right
better,
there.
take Metro Rail. Right?
There
And
you
it's
go.
about, what, a couple blocks away from the station. So great. All right. Well, thank you for inviting everyone to CTAC. It really is a great opportunity. I hope people take you up on that. So let's switch gears for a second and let's talk about your kind of day-to-day job, which is as a partner at Wernick & Co., right? So I've always said land use is the flip side of the coin when you talk about transportation. Those two things really go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. So let's talk about land use and what you do for a living and how that relates to transportation.
Yeah, I have a very unique background in that I've worked in the public sector almost all of my career, whether it's at the state, the county, and then most recently at the city of Miami. And while at the city of Miami, I wore multiple different hats. I was an assistant city attorney, I was the chief of staff to the mayor, and then my last stop, I was the zoning administrator. So in all three of those positions, I had an opportunity to impact land use and zoning and the city's growth overall. And I've now transitioned that into the private sector. And, it's a small boutique firm that I'm at. And that's one of the things that drew me to it, where we have such an emphasis on placemaking, where we want to create these livable, walkable communities where people want to live, where they want to work, where they, want to spend their free time, where they want to get their education. So that's a real emphasis for us and the type of work that we do at our firm.
Are there particular parts of the county you're kind of focused on? Kind of certain neighborhoods that you tend to be more active in?
A lot of our work is in the city of Miami, in particular in Wynwood and Edgewater. And obviously, what's happened in Wynwood the past decade is quite incredible, going from an industrial district to, like I just mentioned, this livable, walkable community. And I think the next step is getting that train station at 29th.
That would be for the Northeast Corridor, the Tri-Rail, potentially Tri-Rail station, right?
Exactly. In other jurisdictions like North Miami, Bay Harbor, it runs the gamut. And That's a great thing about land use and zoning. Each jurisdiction is different. There's no one size fits all. You need to really understand the culture and the characteristics of the neighborhood that you're going into when you're planning a project.
Yeah, I think Wynwood is fascinating. We're watching in real time urban revitalization, and have we learned the lessons of the past to do it right, to do it in a way that doesn't displace people, to do it in a way that maintains some level of affordability, to do it in a way that creates walkable streets, as you said, transit access. So and I think so far from what I've seen, Wynwood is doing a pretty good job of trying to build out that neighborhood in the right way.
Right, and Wynwood is unique because, like you mentioned, displacement. Yes, there was some residential components to that neighborhood, but it was largely industrial. So converting that into this mixed-use district where you're now bringing residential into the neighborhood along with the mix of other uses that previously weren't permitted is just really unique to see. And then to the north, Wynwood is, from a zoning context, it was called the NRD1. The zoning overlay to the north is the NRD2, which was Wynwood Norte, but that has a huge residential component already built in. There was a lot of single family, duplex, and the rules and regulations that were created for that section is really to incentivize and revitalize that area, knowing it is a residential neighborhood, unlike Wynwood to the south.
Right.
So I said before, each neighborhood has its unique characteristics that you need to take into consideration when doing planning for the neighborhood.
I think the real challenge in Wynwood is going to be keeping those artists, right? Because that's the story. The artists come in, and obviously that was a big part of the plan from the beginning with Tony Goldman.
Right.
And it's what Wynwood is known as. Well, as property values rise, as rents rise, as taxes rise, a lot of times it pushes out the very artists that made that such a unique place. So that, to me, is going to be the real challenge. How do you keep that culture, the arts and culture there?
That's always the push and pull. One of the good things is that with the Wynwood bid, there's a subcommittee called the Wynwood Design Review Committee, where almost any new project that is going to be taking place in Wynwood is going to have to review it for compatibility with the neighborhood. There's also an art component for each project where a certain percentage of the facade needs to be treated with a mural or some type of art. So it is difficult. It's trying to find that balance, but it's something that the city's cognizant of and was built into the regulations governing that neighborhood. Great.
So let's talk a little bit more about yourself. What's your background? We're born and raised in Miami. Where'd you go to school? What neighborhood?
Born and raised in what's now Pinecrest. Okay. Went to Palmetto High School. Did my undergraduate degree at Florida State, and then came back to. I'm a diehard Hurricanes fan.
Oh, okay. We'll
sorry
do that.
to all my
it's
FSU people.
I'm not either, so I'll just whatever you want me to do. I'll do everything but the Gator Chomp. I just can't do it.
And then came back and went to Florida International for law school, which has just been such a blessing. I don't know if you saw the latest rankings, but they surpassed the University of Miami and are right
law
behind
school
Florida. The law school specifically. It's amazing what they've done in such a short period of time.
Yeah, now they've announced that partnership with Baptist for the medical school, which is enormous, right?
Exactly. So bringing mass transportation to the FIU campus is going to be critical.
Which is what we call the East-West Corridor.
Exactly.
So we haven't talked about it, but there is a SMART plan, Strategic Miami Area Rapid Transit Plan, which is one of the original promises of the People's Transportation Plan. And one of the primary corridors is that East-West connection out to FIU. And I would agree that's critical.
Correct. Yeah, and I remember reading recently that there's some potential traction on using some rail lines that are already existing in place that may not have been able to have been used in the past.
Right, the CSX lines.
Exactly.
Yeah, so listen, we have existing infrastructure. How do we leverage that to advance projects? I mean, the best example of that is Brightline. Now, in that case, they, I think, did the work on the tracks, and then we came in to subsidize some stations. And hopefully sometime in the near future, we'll be running real commuter rail there, not just interstate passenger rail. So, but all that was made possible because we had an existing rail corridor and a private company that was willing, able, and excited about these public partnerships. So you're right. There's potentially a similar scenario with CSX on many of the tracks that they own. So and then you pull in the land use. A lot of those tracks are in industrial areas and may be able to be retrofitted for more mixed use, more residential,
Right.
more density and intensity, which will help feed that transit. So
Our favorite terms,
Yes.
TODs, transit-oriented development.
yeah. And apparently there was a law passed in Tallahassee recently that would help facilitate that. We were talking about that.
Yeah, we were speaking briefly before this. Senate Bill 102, the Live Local Act. It's probably the most comprehensive affordable housing bill that's been ever passed by the Florida legislature. It does a multitude of things, including over $700 million in funding for affordable housing programs. It creates 3 new ad valorem tax exemptions. But most importantly, from a land use and zoning and planning standpoint, it preempts local jurisdictions for a period of 10 years for qualifying projects. And those projects would have to provide 40% of a rental project with affordable housing, meaning 120% of AMI, area median income. And what's interesting is that these qualifying projects can be in places that are zoned for commercial, industrial, or mixed use. So now you have a residential product coming into an area that isn't otherwise zoned for residential.
Regardless of what the local zoning code says.
Regardless of the local zoning code, regardless of the comprehensive plan. So it's a complete preemption. And to take that one step further, in addition to allowing this residential component that otherwise wouldn't be allowed, it preempts them with respect to density. So a qualifying project would be allowed to have, from a density standpoint, the largest density allowed for in that jurisdiction. Wow. So for instance, in the county, it would be 250 units per acre. In the city of Miami, it would be 1,000 units per acre. So you may find yourself in a situation where there is a property that would be zoned for 36 units an acre that would now be allowed for 1,000 units per acre.
Automatically.
So, automatically, it's a by right process. Another interesting aspect to it is height. The maximum allowed height would be the height that is allowed within 1 mile of the property, obviously within that jurisdiction, or 3 stories, whichever is greater. So you're going to find yourself most likely with these denser, nubs or buildings or even just areas as a result of this law.
Wow. Now, one might think, well, Miami doesn't have a lot of industrial, but we really do. We just maybe don't think of it as industry, but
Right.
Warehouse districts, right? That's all light industrial and other commercial areas. So
Right, and it's even mixed use. And so Miami 21, the zoning code for the city of Miami puts an emphasis on mixed use. So, a majority of the different types of zoning classifications in that code allow for mixed use development. So this really could be applied, almost citywide.
Well, this is transformational, and yet no one's heard of it because I think there so much came out of the legislature this year, a lot of hot button topics, other growth management legislation that people are concerned about. That this kind of flew under the radar a little bit. Huh? At least, with respect to the public.
Within the industry, people know about it and discussing it. It's good to see places like Miami-Dade County, City of Miami kind of getting ahead of it because the bill isn't effective until July 1st. So it's glad that they're being proactive in terms of how these applications are going to be handled. But it's transformative. It's transformative.
Right. So let's get back to CTAC for a minute. You're the chair. How long have you been chair, and how long is the term?
I have been chair since January. Okay. It's a 2-year term. I'm just thrilled that my colleagues, gave me the opportunity to serve in this role.
And in addition to wanting to fill the membership, which obviously is a major priority, what are some of your other priorities? Like, what would you like to accomplish in those 2 years as chair?
Really, citizen engagement. I mean, that's the sole focus of this board is to get people involved. I knew about the TPO. I knew about CTAC as a result of my involvement at the city and working with Mayor Suarez and attending meetings with him. But otherwise, I probably would not have known about this. So I think it's critical to get the word out there and let people know that this is here. You have a voice. Let us know what your priorities are so that we can make the TPO aware, of what those priorities are if they are not already.
Yeah, it's funny. We have a similar challenge. How do we engage the
Right.
community on a topic that's so critically important that everyone has an opinion on,
Right,
and yet when you hold a public hearing, nobody shows up,
right,
right? When you have the big budget hearing, nobody talks about transportation, and yet it's something that people are passionate about. So there's some kind of disconnect there that I haven't been able to figure out. So what we're trying to do, and I'm sure you will as well, is meet people where they are. Right? Don't expect
Right.
them to come to a public hearing. You have to make a proactive effort, like we do with this program, to try to reach people in unique and innovative ways.
right. And that's why I jumped at the opportunity to be here. So, again, thank you for giving me this platform and, helping make people aware that this committee does exist. And if you're interested in serving, please, by all means, again, reach out to Paul Chance.
Okay. And we have a few short minutes left, so now we're going to throw some curveballs at you. So
Bring
let's
it.
see, what are you reading? What's on your bedside?
Oh, man. I have a stack of books by my bedside that I wish I could say I'm reading.
Osmosis.
Yeah, maybe I'll get to them one day. But it's a lot of work right now and
Do
reading
you like
stuff related-
nonfiction, fiction? What's your kind of go-to?
I like nonfiction.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
You have a book on Abe Lincoln that I probably read 3 pages at a time, and it's been sitting there for months.
Some
I
good
gotta finish this thing.
bedtime reading.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoy it more because sometimes the stuff that happens in real life, it's just
Right.
as crazy as stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Crazier.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why so many people write about Miami. It's like you don't have to, come up with scenarios. Just turn on the
Yeah.
news and you have materials.
Florida man.
Florida man.
There you go.
Yeah, it's never a dull day. And let's see, who are some of your heroes?
That's a tough one. I draw a lot of inspiration from music, not necessarily any one particular artist, but just something that I've always grown up with, something that I just have around the house.
What genre do you lean towards?
I really listen to everything. My big pandemic splurge was I bought a 1950s Wurlitzer jukebox that
Wow.
plays 7-inch
That's
vinyl.
cool.
Yeah. So I have a young
So you have
daughter.
the party house, man.
Not even that. Sometimes I have a young daughter, and Sunday mornings you turn on the jukebox and
That's
you
cool.
just make breakfast and have a good time. So I draw a lot of my inspiration from music.
Did it come with all the music, or you had to kind of load it?
It did, but I curated it myself.
Of course. Favorite band? Can I tease that out of you, or is it like choosing between children?
It really is. It really depends on mood, really what you're
Yeah,
listening to.
Absolutely.
Um,
No, I agree with you. I've always said music is a shortcut to the soul. At
There
least
you
for
go.
me. Singing it, dancing it, listening to it, whatever it takes.
I don't know if anyone wants to hear me sing.
You play any instruments?
Terribly.
Which one?
I just have a guitar around the house that
You got your 4 chords.
Exactly.
That's it.
Exactly.
I do the same with the ukulele. It's okay.
Yeah, I try to instill music in my daughter, and piano I think is a gateway to
Yeah.
any other instrument. I think it's such an important instrument to learn and know. Yeah.
That's great, man. Anything else you want to touch on?
No, again, I just really thank you for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure to be here, especially on your birthday.
No, of course. You got the special day, man. Special guest. Well, listen, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do with CTAC and at the law firm and throughout your life. So thank you for being a guest. We'll be happy to have you back in a year or so to see what else CTAC is up to.
Excellent.
And please, if you're interested in being a part of the solution, we have multiple opportunities. You could join CTAC. As Joe spoke about earlier, we have vacancies on our board at the CITT. We also have the CITT Ambassador Program. So if you're a regular rider of the transit system and you want to be our eyes and ears, please become a CITT Ambassador. You'll receive rewards that you can exchange for mobility rewards. You'll receive points that you can exchange for mobility rewards. And all that information can be found on our website, miamidade.gov/CITT. That's all the time we have for this episode. We will be welcoming another guest in a little bit, so stay with us. And until then, we'll see you in a couple of weeks for another episode of Mobility Matters. Thank you for joining us.